Can I just give everybody a little reminder before we start that usually we allow the speaker to present for about half an hour, 35 minutes or so without interruption. So if we have questions for today's speaker, can we please ask them at the end of the presentation? So if something comes up during the presentation that you particularly want to ask about, make a note, and we'll use the usual policy at the end of the presentation of people raising their hands, please, if they want to ask a question, and I will bring people in turn to join in the discussion. So thank you for all being mute all the way through the presentation. So without any more ado, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce today's speaker to you. I'm always aware that people give up time for this task, and it takes time to prepare a presentation, and we're absolutely delighted that Subha has decided that she would join us today. She's the founder director of IIRN, which is based in Delhi, an experienced educator, a Fulbright scholar, and a registered special educator with the RCI. So she obviously has a lot of experience, and she's worked as a consultant to NIPMED and other organizations. And today she's going to be talking to us about a very important subject. I think the ideas around interdisciplinary collaboration, particularly with a focus upon universal design for learning. So without any more ado, I'm going to hand over to Subha Chandrasekar and ask her if she will please give the presentation today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rose and Rajesh from NIPMED. Good evening to all the participants who have taken out time to join and attend my session today. I'm very pleased and also honored to be presenting today for the network of people working in the field of inclusive education and research. So without further ado, as Sir said, I would present now, and let's take the session forward. So today's session is going to be on the interdisciplinary approach and using the universal design for learning. How can we make it more successful for inclusive classrooms and help teachers to collaborate so that the learners find it easy to have access to education, are able to learn and progress. So let's first look at what an interdisciplinary approach is. In the school system, the secondary system, primary, secondary, and the school system, when we talk of an interdisciplinary approach, it is connecting the concepts across the different subjects and across different classes. So we have tried this kind of approach in few schools in Delhi, 8 schools precisely last year, and in 2 schools when we started working on this approach way back in 2016-17. There we, in the first school, we took a concept like the solar system and worked across it, across the classes from class 1 to class 5, as well as across the same class but different subjects. That is what I will be mainly presenting today. This kind of an approach certainly involves collaboration between teachers, students, and other stakeholders. So when I was taking remedial sessions for children inside an inclusive school, and we were working on their classroom concepts, I saw that certain concepts kept repeating themselves across the subjects. Something like, a solar system, or maybe at higher level, sustainability or sustainable development was taught in geography, was taught in science, was taught in economics, but somehow there was no collaboration between the teachers. And in the remedial classes, when I taught the children as a concept across the subjects, they were able to learn it better, they were able to relate to it better, and they always attempted this question during assessments, this being an important subject. So from this stemmed the whole idea, and then I started working with the teachers, getting them to collaborate with each other. Um, we also needed the pedagogy to be flexible. So the management was also roped in, and we said that we will not do it for all the concepts, but at the beginning of an academic session, for example, in the month of March, because most schools in India start their new academic session in April, mid April, or maybe late March. So, just before that, I urged the teachers to sit down, look at their year long curriculum, identify concepts which could be easily taught and collaborated with, and work in unity. And in this, we saw that the universal design for learning was an excellent framework. And since the teachers of these two schools had already been trained in UDL by me, they were able to kind of bridge the gap between the theory that they knew and how to make it practically possible in the classrooms. And then when the NEP happened, we saw that the NEP too has an experiential learning approach where, especially in the primary classes, it is asking us to explore the relationships among different subjects and encourage this kind of an approach at every stage. So it was very nice to see that what we were doing in isolation at one school had already met with the approval at the policy level. This is important because when we reach out to school leaders and principals and ask them to try something new, they come back with the same old answers of there is curriculum to be completed, syllabuses to be finished, and assessments to be done, and paperwork to be done. Even yesterday, I was training at a set of Navodaya teachers, and they had the same thing to say. So, when you have a policy in hand which talks of such things, it is definitely an advantage. That's the reason why I try to bring in policy like the National Education Framework, the latest one, which is at the then it's easy for us to convince the school leaders that no, this is something that I am not saying out of my imagination. This is something that the latest educational policies want us to implement. And if you are there with us, when it comes from the top, the school leader has agreed to implement such a thing, the teachers are willing to try it out with us. So again, some of the NEP points I want to accentuate is that there has to be education about the environment and related urgent issues such as climate change, as well as development of moral and ethical capacities. Whenever we look at any educational policies in the last few years, post after we have entered this century, across the countries, we find that there is a lot of emphasis on sustainable development, climate change. We really do not talk as we used to talk about only STEM. And I'm not saying that we do not talk, we do. But the approach has become much more relevant to the changes that we are seeing around us. And I think when we are talking about education of children with disabilities, it is more important that we also teach them these things. And once they learn it, I find that they are able to follow sustainability to a larger extent than the typical students because they are so caring about the climate and the environment. NEP also talks about multidisciplinary education, which fosters interdisciplinary. So the knowledge and the process capacities from more than one discipline, we have to look first, identify a central theme, and then look at certain situations, or we look at cultural concepts, and then we try and stretch this concept and theme to as many subjects as we can. Also, in the process, making sure that numeracy skills, language skills are not left behind. Now, that seems a lot, but it is not impossible. Talking of the NCF, um, NCF talks about all curricular area and the subjects within them, that there has to be an interdisciplinary approach, which is integrating concepts, content, and methods from other subjects or disciplines. And NCF promotes these kind of topics in environmental education, again, same like climatic condition, and also development of moral and ethical capacities in an interdisciplinary manner. In addition, we can offer other interdisciplinary subjects. Now, these seem to be very theoretical. When I show you through the lesson plan that we created and implemented, I hope these concepts become a little more easy to understand. So the NEP talks about the 4 stages of foundational stage and preparatory stage, and then the middle school and the secondary school. So at each stage, they have categorized the subjects, which include languages, mathematics, art education, physical education, and the world around us. And the world around us in particular is designed as an interdisciplinary area, specifically meant to help students observe and understand their immediate social and natural environment. So when we look at these, we find that there is a lot of scope to collaborate and a lot of scope to teach concepts to children as a whole, bringing in relevant information from different disciplines. At the middle school level, you will have the interdisciplinary goals again and competencies in the learning standards, and right from content to pedagogy to assessment. So when I talk of middle school, we have the children who have already learned the skills of reading, writing, and numeracy, and here they are studying concepts. So when we are teaching certain concepts, it is important for us to integrate these skills of reading, writing, numeracy, as well as concept learning, right? And again, at the secondary stage, the NCF talks about using an interdisciplinary pedagogy in all these areas which have been specified: mathematics, computing, science, social science, humanities, vocational education, physical education, and arts education. Further, these are the chapters that they have specified for an interdisciplinary approach in NCF. Classes 9 and 10, individuals in the society in grade 9, and environmental education in grade 10. So what we are talking about is actually there in our curriculum framework for us to pick and design an interdisciplinary approach based lesson plan. It's the teachers at the later stage do not even have to worry about what are the which subject should I take and which lesson should I take. Now, when I work in these inclusive schools, I find that there is very little collaboration between the special educators and the regular teachers. That is not going to help any learner, especially ones with disabilities. Being in the field of inclusive education and working with general educators for so many years, there is one thing that I have understood is that we cannot sit in our remedial rooms and resource rooms and working with our only small group of children with disabilities and claiming that they are in an inclusive setup. Our children have to be in the classroom. Our children need to have access to all those opportunities that any other learner in the school has. You and me know that. How do we do it? We do it by empowering the general education teacher. She has to embrace all the learners. We can be there as a support in co-teaching. We can be there to help her make UDL-based lesson plans. We can be there to be as a partner in so many other ways, getting the materials done and all that. But it has to be a collaborative effort. So when I talk about collaboration, it is important that the teachers and the special educator collaborate, and the special educator promotes collaboration between two different general education teachers from different disciplines. For the special educator to effectively do this, she needs to know the curriculum in an inclusive school in detail. We just cannot be confident and comfortable knowing our IEPs and UDL and practicing it in our resource room. We must know what are the topics that every learner is learning at every stage, what are the different ways that can be taught, where can an interdisciplinary approach be used effectively, because only when we have this knowledge, we can confidently collaborate with them and help them to put these into practice. And trust me, once this starts, the children enjoy so much, the teachers find it so rewarding, they are themselves ready to take on the newer topics. At yesterday, I was working with a group of PGT teachers, and I was doing UDL with them for the first time. Till now, I have worked a lot with primary school teachers because it's easier to convince them. Nobody is talking about board classes, school leaving exams, grades, school reputation. These are real life problems. uh, they are happy to bring in any kind of change that I am suggesting. Middle school, okay, they are still there. Class 8, they start getting a little uneasy. They talk about the performance of the child, how it will affect the school average. 9 and 10, 11 and 12 are a big no-no for any kind of new approach or a strategy. So when I had a whole set of teachers who were teaching classes 11 and 12, and they were so interested in presenting a UDL based lesson plan, it was very, very rewarding for me, because that shows that if you give the right kind of tools to educators, they are ready to embrace it and use it for their learners, no matter which grade they are teaching. So moving on, um, stuck. Yeah. So in 11th and grades, interdisciplinary areas can include a range of subjects like I said, sustainability, climate change, public health, media, journalism, legal studies. These are the subjects that are being offered to our students in grades 11 and 12, Richard, for you to understand our education system. There is also knowledge of traditions, practices, and so many of these subjects are offering practical considerations, practical options. So these are the choices that we need to make for our children in order to ensure that children with disabilities complete schooling and they have the right levels to go for higher education, vocational education, so that they also have opportunities for employment. It's important to know that CBSE offers more than 40 vocational subjects which can be used for these children as well as others. And these are good options for vocational subjects in future to follow up on. Now, bringing in UDL, I'm hoping that all of you here are aware of the UDL principles. I will be briefly touching upon that. I think UDL lends itself beautifully to this kind of an interdisciplinary approach that meets the personal development, social cohesion, and economic development of every learner. Because eventually, we must have a lifespan approach to all our learners, with or without disabilities. We should not be considering short-term based educational approaches and ideas. Instead, I urge parents and educators to look at the life of their wards 5 years down the lane. That's what we do for our typically developing children. When they are born, and within 2 years, we are looking at which schools are we going to send them, which is a better school, which is a closer school. Then once they enter middle school, we already start looking at the subjects that they are good at. And by the time they are in 9th and 10th, we urge them to look at the streams that they're going to study, pick up in 11th and 12th, and the colleges that, and we are also preparing, financially for that. Then after college, the employment aspect, after employment, the family aspect, settling down, marriage. So I think we need to look at all of this for our children with disabilities also, because that is what is going to help them have an inclusive life, a fulfilling life, a dignified life. So the economic development of every learner is important, even when we are planning an interdisciplinary approach right from the primary level. So you know that the flexible pedagogy that I'm referring to here is UDL. And for the uninitiated, the three principles of UDL are multiple means of representation, multiple means of action and expression, and multiple means of engagement. So multiple means of representation is to give learners various ways of acquiring the same information and knowledge, which will help them to acquire this knowledge based on their learning style. This is what we are looking at in the interdisciplinary approach as well. Action and expression talks about how the learners will demonstrate the knowledge that they have. So once the teacher is planning a lesson plan based on UDL, she needs to also look at various types of assessment. And in this context, the usual um, argument that teachers give is that eventually they have to write a pen and paper test. So why do I give them a different kind of an assessment in the younger classes and kind of, disappoint them later? My answer to this is, across the globe and even in India, the education system offers a 20% internal assessment, which usually all learners fully get those 100% marks in that 20% internal assessment, because for those who are struggling, that 20% could mean actually getting a good percentage. Why not the school use multiple means of action and expression to check the students, to assess the students on this 20%? And that's exactly what the educational boards want. They want that children who struggle with pen and paper should be assessed in as many ways as possible by the school, because the school knows, here is this child who is a great singer, here is this child who's a great dancer, or here is this child who can do digitally so well. So I use this aspect to promote schools to provide multiple means of action and expression. And multiple means of engagement, as you know, is to tap into the learner's interest. This is again has to be taken into consideration when we are planning the lesson plan, because this is how they are going to be motivated to learn better. So again, this principle, I love this clip art, which is showing us how a simple concept of a pie can be processed by different learners differently. And it also tells us that learning differs across tasks. So one learner can be performing very well in one discipline and not so well in the other discipline. In schools, there is a tendency to herd the learners together. If you're good at science and maths, why don't you improve in English and social science, or vice versa? You can do it. Not necessary. The graph can be zigzag, the intra learner graph. So teachers need to understand that. And learning differs across development. Students who have been pretty good and managing well at the pre-primary and primary classes suddenly not doing well in upper primary and middle school could mean that they have poor generalization skills and poor transfer of learning skills. That means the lesson plans which are created by the teachers need to have an additional component of generalization from the upper primary classes. To make it more clear, when we are learning in the primary classes or pre-primary classes, we are learning the alphabets, we are learning the numbers, we are learning words. When you come to fourth and fifth grade, you are asked to write essays. So you are asked to build on the capacity that you have learned, the skills that you have learned. Similarly, your addition, subtraction, multiplication, division are no longer the concepts that you're being checked on. You have to learn fractions, you have to learn percentage. So applying these concepts. If the lesson plans are based on more of a generalization of these concepts, I think more learners will be able to succeed in these concepts and in these classes. So the teachers do need to know that diversity is the norm and not the exception. And who better than special educators to help them understand this, to help them create an interdisciplinary plan. I've just put this here because again, as I said, I thought some of you may be there who are not fully exposed to UDL and the concepts of UDL. When we talk about representation, we look at language and symbols. So clarifying vocabulary and symbols, every subject has its own set of vocabulary. Identifying these vocabulary using the interdisciplinary approach, these symbols and vocabulary can be reinforced across the disciplines, clarifying syntax and structure, helping the learners to decode text, mathematical notations, and also helping them to understand a concept across language. So the NEP 2020 also lays emphasis on regional languages, and many children with disabilities and children whose parents are transferred regularly do have this issue of learning multiple languages. So if they are able to learn a concept in one language and maybe the language spoken at home, it might help them to understand a concept better. Certainly, this means a lot of effort and work, but I think it's worth it. And using multimedia. It's 7:30. I think I will rush through this. So helping students to comprehend. Action and expression could mean physical action, uh, using tools and technologies to help students tell you what they know. Multimedia for communication, for uh, structuring and composing sentences, and building fluencies with graduated levels of support. So they could be given credit for simpler sentences, fewer points, and over a period of time, help them to move from the beginner stage to the expert stage. Optimizing individual choice and autonomy and minimizing threats. I'm rushing through this because I want to show you the interdisciplinary lesson planning, which is the crux of today's presentation. So here we started with the solar system. And in class 1, the activities were very simple, like drawing the sun and creating a model using clay. And the subjects that were involved was visual arts and environmental sciences. And the teachers collaborated and agreed to use the same set of words as a list of new vocabulary to reinforce learning. So this is the work done by the children. You can see that the charts and the clay work, everything that was done using the same technology. Again in class 3, learning about the rotation of Earth around the sun through dance. So the performing arts teacher, the English teachers decided to use for their dictation list the same set of words. And some of the other English concepts that were being taught to the children at this class was also on the same lines. So capitalizing the first word of every sentence or the proper nouns. So a lot, it looks very simple here, but it was important for the teachers to sit down together, understand the concepts, decide the timeline, and look at assessment concepts in each subject, and then go ahead. When we looked at solar system, and the whole project was called the Dance of the Sun in class 3, there was a lesson on the solar system from EVS. English teachers opted for watching an audio visual of the rotation and revolution for both English classes uh, as well as EVS, and to learn the new names of the seasons caused by revolution. So the main collaboration here was between the English and the EVS teachers. So these were the English concepts that the English teachers decided to reinforce in tune with the subject being taught in EVS. So 6 new concepts could be taught at the English level, and everything was in sync with what was being taught during the EVS class. Again, the visual art teachers drawing of the sun, showing rotation and revolution, and drawing of the different pictures during the art classes of the season, different seasons, and when talking to the children using the same vocabulary. Maths, introduction of the time period taken by the Earth to complete one rotation and revolution. So the concept of seconds, minutes, hours, math teachers were further roped in. At class 5 level, there was a chapter on solar system giving the details of perihelion and aphelion, the different planets, variation of the seasons. So the environmental sciences and English teachers collaborated again on vocabulary. Then the celebration of festivals that occur during the Indian subcontinent, that is during Makar Sankranti, and a festival fair was organized at the school where the parents were also invited to set up stalls as per their region and the culture that was followed at home. And all students and teachers visited these stalls, and the entire school participated in this fair. So Pongal in Tamil Nadu, Bihu and Makar Sankranti, all of these was shown during the festival fair, and there was a lot of interaction and joy and fun during the learning. Then when it came to maths again, they looked up this making bars and pie charts where Mercury is the smallest planet, and that factor was brought in, and the chapter of the solar system was again used. So this was at the computer class. So they were given these topics and they learned to insert pictures in the slides. So this is one small activity that I want you all to do, where you could choose one of these goals and talk about, make it an interdisciplinary approach lesson plan. I don't know whether we have time for it, but definitely you could kind of create this and put it in our group, and I'll be happy to comment on it. So you could take a screenshot. So the giveaways or the takeaways from this session is that general education teachers and special educators need to collaborate to plan inclusive pedagogy. We also need to involve our students and other stakeholders, like we did in the cultural fair, festival fair, where we brought in the parents as well. When we do this, creating an interdisciplinary plan is not difficult. School leadership definitely needs to support general education teachers, because without the principal agreeing to this kind of an experiment and then learning that this could be so useful for all learners with diverse needs to progress, it's difficult, because if the principals are not with us, it's difficult to do such a thing. And how do we get to know more about our learners? What kind of likes, interests they have? What are the challenges they meet? So I encourage teachers to create Google Forms and give the links to the children with questions, simple questions. I like to listen to music when I am working on a project, or I walk when I study. So these kind of things, give them the input that there are kinesthetic learners, there are auditory learners, there are visual learners, and then make their lesson plans and activities based on this. And of course, an interdisciplinary approach promotes inclusion and differentiated assessment. And we found that the engagement of students in the teaching learning process increased significantly. And definitely, we need to have inclusive policies stated in documents and put in the school policies, which says that an interdisciplinary approach will be used in certain lessons during the academic session. So with that, I conclude my session, and the forum is open for questions.
Thank you very much for a very clear and concise presentation. I found that most engaging and very interesting. I think importantly, you talked about principles quite a lot. The principles of the ways in which we work. And I was delighted. Much of my work in the last 20 years has been about listening to student voices and listening to what we can learn from the students as well as teach them. So clearly that's a principle which relates very well to the work you've done in UDL. Now, I'm quite sure we will have some questions. If people would like to raise their hands, if they have a question, please, then I'll be able to bring you in. what people are thinking. Perhaps I could start with one. One of the challenges that we've certainly found here in the UK, and I know has been true in other parts of Europe as well, is that some teachers seem to believe that the responsibility for students with special educational needs is that of the special educator. You know, I've heard it said, you're the person who's trained, you're the person who's qualified and recognised, so you should be dealing with this. Have you found that at all in any of the work that you've done?
Certainly, sir. This is again one of the common things that we find with some teachers in schools, because I think that overall the performance of the student, the teachers feel that their role is, or they are going to be judged by the performance of the students. So when it comes to children with special needs, especially with disabilities, if the child doesn't perform well, they will be accountable. So over a period of time, when they realize that the special educator is there to help them, support them and not judge them, and this should be coming from the principal and the school leaders as well, then they tend to thaw. Although some of them maintain that attitude, for a very long time, but the role of the special educator in supporting the general education teacher is very important here, because many special educators are themselves not very sure what exactly they should be saying to general education teachers who have been in the school for a very long time. The special educators are young, they are new. The concept of having a special educator in a mainstream school is not very old, so they don't have a solid footing. So if somebody tells them that you take care and it's your responsibility, they just tend to take it, say, okay, better off this way, coming from a senior teacher who has been around for a longer time than me.
Thank you. Yes. Would anybody else like to come in either on that point or to ask a question?
I think Mercy Sunita has raised her hand. If she could, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me? Am I
Yes.
audible? Because
Yes, we can hear
my
you.
network is a bit sketchy today for some reason. Ma'am, I missed the bits and pieces of your presentation because of the network issue.
Mhm.
What was the age group that you had this experiment going on for?
We had it up to class 5. So you could say up to class ages 9 and 10, and starting
Right.
from the age of 6. So
Oh,
classes
okay.
1 to 5, we were able to do it.
So particularly with with the Indian curriculum and with where English is not the mother tongue of the Indian general public.
True.
How did they teach? Since these are SEND students, special educational needs students, how did they teach grammar, nouns, pronouns, and parts of speech? Because it's quite difficult to help the children understand. It takes time for them to understand parts of speech.
This concept was not only for the special needs children, it was for the entire class. So
I know you
irrespective.
mentioned UDL. Yes, I
Yes.
remember.
So the teachers were teaching all learners, because we didn't want
Mm-hmm.
them. And I strongly believe that when we create union-based lesson plans, there are many children who are struggling without disabilities but would benefit also. So that is what I promote, that just like we all use lifts and ramps, elevators, even if we do not have the disability and we are capable of climbing even 10 stories, we opt for a more pleasurable and less taxing activity. So curriculum is the same. The more approachable and access based you make it, everybody is going to benefit from it. Definitely teaching all the concepts to the children with disabilities was not easy. So as far as in younger classes, even up to class 8, I promote teachers to teach all concepts to my children. Whether I will assess them or not is a call which I will take after talking to the parents and the teachers. So there is no need to put any limit on how much a child can be exposed to. What the child should be assessed upon is something that we can discuss based on the level of the child and how much the child has gained. So this has been my approach for all subjects and all grades. Like we have had
But
children with autism who loved to learn
Mhm.
German, they struggled with giving an assessment. So at
Mhm.
class 8 level, the child dropped out of German, but she continued
Mhm.
to go and sit in the German class, and she continued to pick up speaking German because clearly she was enjoying it, but she was not
Mhm.
able to frame sentences and do passages. So we said we will not take an assessment for this child, but why deny her the pleasure of being in studying German?
Absolutely true. But for the sense students, how did the teachers teach them? I know it was a general this thing, but for
So
the sense students.
in the schools that I was working full time as a special educator, we have the students from class 4 coming for remedial work twice a week to the special
Mhm.
educator. The rest of the time they
Mhm.
are there within the regular class. For highly impacted children, they even have a shadow teacher along with them.
Mhm.
So that is one part. For children from classes 1, 2, and 3, the teachers would come and meet me at least once a week. That was there in the
Mhm.
rooster. We had a pre-decided time. So they will teach in the class, and they knew about the child and whatever challenges they were meeting, because many times these children who are very young, they had not yet reached a clear diagnosis, something like a specific learning disability. We cannot diagnose children so young. So they
Mhm.
just knew that these were children who were struggling, like children ESL, the children from who have never been exposed to English, or their first generation learners. So they would bring a
Mhm.
list of all these children with the problems they faced, and we would discuss what could be the appropriate strategies that we could use. Sometimes we had a pull out even for these children. uh, they would miss a couple of classes where we felt that coming for the remedial was more important. When we
Mhm.
discussed the remedial strategies, the parents were also there and they had to follow it up with the special educator and the general education teacher and at home. So we were reinforcing these concepts in 3 places, and it really helped a lot. Apart from
Mhm.
that, at the beginning of every academic year, before the session started, I would meet teachers and apprise them about how they could go, what kind of strategies could be used, and where they should get back to me. Not wait for a long time, If they feel that there is something I miss, they should immediately get back to me. So this kind of coordination between me and the general education teachers help the students. That's why I keep harping upon collaboration between, the general education teachers and the special educator, because
Very
it's a
important.
win-win
Yes.
situation for the child. None of us are
Yeah.
important, only the child is important, and when it comes
True.
to
True.
that, we all need to collaborate.
True. True. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you
Thank you
for
for
the
your question.
question, Mercy. That provided some interesting insights, I think. Does anybody else have a question, please? Do raise your hand if you want to come in. Don't be shy. This is your opportunity to hear from a very knowledgeable lady here. So
Thank you. So when I have this kind of a response, I say that they have heard me completely and processing it, or they haven't heard me at all.
no, I'm sure they have. I'm interested. You've made various comments about not just being interdisciplinary, but parents being involved as well. Have you generally found parents quite receptive to these ideas, or um, is there a kind of pressure from parents coming to concentrate entirely on the kind of examination curriculum and the academic outcomes that schools are judged by?
Yeah, thank you for your question. That's a very, very uh, pertinent question, because I think most parents whom I meet initially are simply scared. It's with great difficulty that they have gained admission into a mainstream school, and they want to hold on to it for as long as possible, and that means for the entire duration of the child's education. Their primary worry is, if I talk something about my child facing difficulties and I need to put in extra work, will my child get thrown out of the school, is the first question most parents are worried about. So even if the parents don't ask, I first take time out to reassure them, talk to them about these policies that the government has come up with in the last few years, and telling them about the ethos of the school, how they are interested in teaching children with disabilities and diverse learners, and there is no need for them to, remain in that perpetual worried zone. That really helps to break the ice. Once that is done, there are parents who are initially ready to pitch in and help us in learning. They would come forward and learn the strategies, and then they would follow it up at home. And once they see that the child is picking up, then we have very, very cooperative parents. At the same time, we in the Indian system, we also have some very qualified parents who think that they know better than what a mere school teacher or a special educator would know. They go shopping from one place to another, and they come back with several things saying, you are not doing this right. My child's grades should improve. We have come to your school. You should be teaching, not us. Leave us alone, and things like that. Yes, a small percentage of parents do that. But the ones who are involved from the primary classes or even from upper primary, eventually they are the ones who gain the most, because then they start, I keep telling them to look at a lifespan approach for the child, and not a very short term goal or a very, very small myopic vision of the child's life, that they may find it important to focus on the next assessment or the next examination and the grades. I tell them, just don't do that. Look at what your child will do, because that is how children with disabilities learn. In a very short span of time, we really can't show much of an improvement. But when I urge parents to look at a lifespan approach, they have been helped a lot. They are then able to plan and then strategize, and then the child eventually is able to complete schooling and go for something that will enable him to become somebody who's earning, who's employed, and who's leading a dignified life. Yeah, I think we have Shobha Sriram, ma'am.
We have a couple of people coming in with questions now. There's one in the chat box. Gita says, what is the time period it took from planning, execution, and evaluation of one UDL lesson, since the school system has a schedule for each subject, examinations, etc.? Gita, I don't know if you want to answer the question or no. Okay, if you could address that one for us, then
yes, of course.
And then afterwards, I'll bring Shobha in. Sorry.
Yeah, I think there's some wrong answer gone to that. So I'll take that question, which talks about the time period. Yes. So for the time period, I would say to train the teachers, I took one entire year to introduce the concept of universal design for learning. And then, a very good thing is that UDL, by the name that it is known, is probably a new concept for teachers. But when you look at the curriculum across schools now, you will find a lot of UDL already that the teachers are practicing. So I also help them to identify the practices that they are already doing it, that this is not something new and huge that I am putting on your shoulders. You're already doing it. Let's see which is the multiple means of action and representation, or maybe engagement. And we did find a lot of it. So I used a survey, and we found that a lot of practices that the teachers were using were UDL based. That helped them, that encouraged them. Then we took a very small part of the entire year's curriculum and planned a UDL lesson. That took about 3 months, January, February, March. So I started training the teachers sometime in July after they came back from their summer vacation. Then allowed the school to have its set of activities, just kept after them every once a month or something, and meeting small group teachers, only the language teachers, only the science teachers, only the Hindi teachers. So that way it helped. And then, as I said, we took a very, very small portion of the entire curriculum, planned from January to March, got in the materials and methodologies, made sure that we were able to plug in theoretically as many holes as we could. And then we did not implement it in the month of April. The new session started in April. The teachers got comfortable with the new set of students, learned about their students. And then from July, we implemented it in that term, July, August, because September is exam time in India. So after that, we were able to just see what was the result. And then the teachers reported about the, increased engagement, and language acquisition was one area which they felt the students of the ESL had learned to spell better. This was another finding that we had. So this is how it, and I did not ask them to implement the next new lesson plan the very next year. I said, continue to do it. If you're comfortable, add on one more. Few teachers at the primary level added one more lesson plan for the next term, October, November, December. So two things were important to me. One, to make the teachers feel comfortable. So a small lesson that they can easily implement and about which they will get a positive response. Only that will encourage. Teachers are just like all of us. Something you do good, you want to do it again. If you have a bad experience, you give up. So I kept reinforcing, and this is what I do with all teachers where I train on UDL. Start small. Small incremental changes lead to big results. That's my motto.
Thank you. Shobha's been waiting very patiently. I'll bring her in a second, and afterwards, Subha as well. So, Shobha, please.
Yeah, good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
So you were mentioning about parents being cooperative, and also about one set of parents who who are probably shopping all over and coming back to you and bombarding with you with their concerns, and whatever they have found out was best for their students. Have you also come across? I have always seen. I also have a percentage of parents who are in the denial state, do not want to accept that there's probably a difficulty or a disability in the child, and also the the fear from the other mainstream parents saying that, oh, why is a disabled child sitting in my class, so the so-called quote unquote the regular children, they will be picking up the wrong behaviors and the wrong things which they think is wrong, which is not wrong in that sense. So have you come across with those kind of parents? I because I have always seen, it's a challenge to deal with these set of parents. So some insights on how you deal with those parents just helps us also as special educators in school to be able to deal with those parents.
Yeah. There's always one set of parents who will be in the denial stage for a very long time, sometimes for the entire duration that the their child is in the school. So you
that.
try to help them at one point, and then you let them be. It's a journey. You can't push anything down anybody's gullet until unless they want to.
Absolutely.
But I
Yeah.
always make it very clear that I'm always there for them at any point of time when they feel that they need to come and talk to me. So that has helped. Sometimes they come, sometimes it's very rare that both parents are in denial stage. So one parent comes, kinds of vents out and then talks about it, then takes back some tips and things like that. So I allow them. Of course, in the entire time, I think there have been a maximum of 4 or 5 parents who have been in denial, and I've not been able to help them much. But I never give up on the child. Nothing stops me and my teachers from working with the child, irrespective of whether the parent is accepting or not. So I will
Right.
do my best for the child, and I encourage my teachers to do the best for the child. The parents will come around one day. My job is to empower the child, and I urge the teachers and special educators to have the same attitude, that let the parents be. They are having their own set of worries and their own set of apprehensions. So they will come around. And if not, at least you just give them a safe place for them to come and talk to you whenever they want. Second thing, for parents of typically developing children, my biggest ally has been principals. So I make sure that I have the principal on my side, and I must say I've been very blessed and very lucky. So before again that this March April time usually is very busy. There in the classes where there are children with disabilities, we definitely have orientation sessions for parents. We talk
Right.
to them, tell them that, look, ours is an inclusive school. So your children are not complaining. They are ready to accept their peers as they are. Now it's up to you whether you want to influence them in a positive way or not. That has helped. During cultural
Right.
days like annual days, fairs, our principal goes up on stage and announces on the mic that, look, this is ours is an inclusive school. We have children with diverse abilities. We have enjoyed putting our act together. We don't want to be perfect. Please applaud every effort. So when the principal talks that language, everybody listens. You
Right.
must get
Right.
the principal on your side.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your deep insights. It
Yeah.
really surely helps. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think we have about 2 minutes left.
Sorry, Richard sir, you are muted.
Very sorry. We have two more questions in the chat box.
Chat, yeah.
Sarada, would you like to ask your question, or do you want me to read it?
I'll do that. What are the challenges you face with schools in the journey of making the school inclusive? The challenges and the barriers are the same that we teach our special educators during their training. So the attitudinal barriers are the worst. You can't imagine the kind of attitudes that certain principals have. They come up with all kinds of notions, and sometimes you want to laugh, sometimes you want to cry. But the attitudinal problems are the worst. It takes brick by brick, you kind of take it away, and change their attitude. You work on the children, show what their abilities are. If they don't want to give admission to many children, you start with saying, okay, take one child, choose one of the categories of the disability that you are comfortable with, talk to your teachers, and then it goes on. But nowadays principals are being a little more progressive, I must say. The other challenges, of course, from the teachers are that we have enough work, we don't need this as well. Sometimes they say these children are here just because of reservation. Why do they have to be here? So you just have to help them to look at what our children are capable of doing. Keep mentoring the teachers, keep mentoring the parents, keep creating awareness, because I feel each one of us as a special educator is a leader. We are one man army. We are fighting for the rights of those who cannot ask for it. So I keep every challenge that I meet, I see an opportunity to engage people in some conversation where you can educate them about the abilities of people with special needs. And that does not necessarily need to be in the school. I can do it in a bus, I can do it on the street, I can do it with a today I was in a government office and one person was talking to me. I told him a little bit about hearing impairment. One person at a time will change the world. That's my attitude.
Thank you. And we have one last question, I think. Just time for a quick answer to
Yeah.
Madalika.
Just a quick answer for, yeah. Behaving wrongly with CSN.
Questions in the chat box.
Right, yeah. Very good question. Children who are coming to a school where there are diverse needs children, which is all schools, need to know that you can have all kinds of abilities while studying in the class. Start creating awareness and sensitization right from the younger classes. In class 6, you find a lot of changes because that's the time when the adolescence is kicking in and they want to have their friends for themselves. They want to have the best people in the class for themselves. And obviously somebody who's lagging behind academically or in any other way is not for them. So if you have sensitized them in classes 3, 4, and 5, this is reduced to a large extent. The teachers have to be vigilant to ensure that there is no bullying happening. We also have buddies. We have buddies who will look after the children with disabilities, and we keep changing the buddies so that the buddy doesn't feel that I am responsible all the time. We also help the students with disabilities as they grow to be assertive, to accept their disability, to educate others. So a child who's having a cochlear implant will talk about how it helps her. For that, I need to prepare that child. a child with dyslexia, will talk to them about why reading writing is a problem for him and he's not choosing to have dyslexia. You work with the child as well as they do it, because one day they have to face the world. You can't keep protecting them. You train, you sensitize the child with disability, you sensitize the child without disability, you work with parents. It's a full package. We celebrate World Disability Day, World Autism Day. We show them pictures, movies. We take them to visits. So this way they do get empathy, and then they learn. But I do not expect adult wisdom from children studying in middle school. Sometimes they will be what they are, adolescents. I do find a change when they come to class 9 and 10, and they are very responsible and they feel strongly accountable for their peers. That is what matters at the end of the day. If I have ensured that they have the right attitude when they are leaving school, I think we have created an impact.
Thank you very much, Subha. I'm sure everybody will agree with me that this has been a most enlightening and enjoyable session. Very well and clearly presented. And I'm sure we're all going to take something away from this conversation today. So thank you for everybody who's participated, and especially for those of you who've asked questions as well. I know sometimes you feel a bit uncomfortable about asking questions, but believe me, our colleagues who come and present here are always only too happy to engage in discussions. So please don't feel shy in the future about asking questions. I'm going to hand over now back to Rajesh, who might wish to say a few words about next month and the coming sessions. So thank you, Rajesh.
Thank you, Professor Richard sir, for yet another chairing the session, and thank you, Subha ma'am, for giving us a lot of insights with regard to your research that you are doing. And I hope the participants are quite enlightened with the presentation that you made. Thank you, dear members who have joined on the Friday evening for the webinar series, IIRN webinar series. Again, we'll be meeting next month, and next month 30th, that is Friday, 30th May, we'll be having another series. So till then, have a great month. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rajesh. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.